Okay, since I last showed you this sheet, you can see I've added a beam in, but I've shown it at the wrong level, not how it should be, just so that you've got to have a think about how you'd move that up and how you'd set out where it's going to be. But I've put a beam on, and I've got here, I want to show you a couple of things: how to draw a section and then how to create a schedule. So if you go to the plan view, you can see now that this beam is actually slightly longer than the viewport. So you've got a chance of moving the viewport so you can get the whole of the beam in it. So you can see the end of the beam. Of course, you might want more than one level different views, and the same with the south elevation. Look at the south elevation. You might want to have different viewports. When any of these views, you can actually create a second view, so you can just right click and press duplicate view, and you can duplicate as a dependent so it's the same, or you can duplicate it with detailing, which means you can add things on just for that view, or just a straight duplicate. If you do a copy of this, you could change things around for a particular part of the drawing. So you can have another view in here which would say copy of south. If it's direct copy, they're the same, or you do a separate copy, you could have different things in this south and the copy of the south. Let's now try and drawing a section through here, or through the end of this beam, like I've asked you to do. So go into level 0, and I wanted to draw a section through here to show the base plate, which I haven't drawn. So view in here, section. So depending on the scale, or depending how big this section starts to look, I want it through here, so I'm going to go from here. You see it's that way, so it's obviously the other way. So you've got to work out which section direction. Once you've clicked that at 90 degrees, you can do this thing to swap the section arrow over. Once you've created that and you said yes, that's what you want, see this blue dotted line? This is showing the extent of the section. So you can have a section which is really close. A true section is just a cut on that line. But in most drawings, you actually want to show some depth of the section. And this is showing that anything that occurred within this blue dotted region would also be picked up on the section. So in this case, it would pick up things that it wouldn't do otherwise. So if there was a column here, it would pick it up in that section. Whereas even if it didn't slice it through. So you can experiment with that, put something here and then see what happens, and you can pull those lines back. But once you've done that, you can see double escape. You'll see you've got some sections. So you've now got something called section 1. And section 1 is now showing the detail of the beam, and if you had drawn a base plate, the base plate would be there. So again, this might be a different scale. You might go even smaller for this one, and then you might want to bring these viewports right down into the actual section that you wanted to show. So you might also want to be showing this little detail. So then this section, or you could do copies of section, and you could pull this into the base plate drawing. So you did common base plate views, and pull this section through here. You've now got this section, and you can see it's showing this section. And if I move this section arrow, or if I move the section arrow on the drawing on here, things would change. If I showed it the other way around, it would move. So if I went on to here, if I deleted this, it would say it's going to delete the section as well. But if I chose to move this or add another section, I'd get more section views. So going back to the drawing now, not tidy, not a good example, but you've got these 3 views, or 3 of the views I've been asking for. I also want to create a schedule. So schedules, right click on here, new schedule. Notice I've added a beam, so I went and created a beam. So I've got a beam and I've got a column. If I go into new schedule, if you look in here, the models that we started with were generic models. So click on generic models here, and you're wanting to schedule building components. and this is the name of your schedule. So you could call it generic module schedule, or you could put exercise 2 schedule, or column and beam project schedule. You can assign different phases for different elements of the schedule. Press OK. Now it gives you the available fields. So most of these fields are common fields which are available for anything you've created which was a family or component. But you will start to see anything that you've created. So for instance, we did length of column on the video, and I also did length of beam. So if I click on length of column and say yes, I'll have that field, and I'll also do length of beam, and you'll see how that works. You may have done different things. I'm going to have the family name may well be useful. I'm going to have a description which may well be blank that I can fill in. I'm going to show a count, which is the number of those elements. Let's have a look. We've got type comments, volume. So if we're going to do embodied carbon, then let's have the volume across there, and then you can create some additional ones if you want to, which you'll see in a bit. So that's there. You can move these up and down, select on any of these and move them up and down depending on what you want. So for instance, it might make sense to have the family name first, and then the count maybe after the family name, or even the count at the beginning. It's up to you. And then some descriptions here. Press OK. So now you've got a schedule here. So this is counting. So it can, on this drawing, it can see one column. This is the family name, so I called mine columns spelt wrong. So I'd have to go back and correct that, otherwise it doesn't show right. And I've got a beam here, base plate with hole. There's 3 of those in there, so I must have added on more than one, which shows us errors in the model where I must have 3 overlapping base plates. So sometimes this is a good way of showing things are not quite right. Length of column, the parameter. So for here, it's saying it's 1000. Length of the beam is doesn't exist. Interestingly, this one I created the beam from the column, and it's still got this in there, which is not right, because I've still got that parameter attached to this. It's the way I created it, so that's been done incorrectly. See the volumes here, very, very small. So are they correct? Are they just noughts? So again, we'll look at how you change the schedules. So in schedules now, column and beam schedule, you've got a number of different things you can edit. The fields, filters, sort and grouping, formatting and appearance. So quickly flick through these. These are the kind of things you just go and try. That takes you back to the fields. So if you wanted to add more fields, you could. You can create a new parameter now, which could just be a comment. So you could create one. Let's call this comment. I didn't tell you much about the distinction between type and instance, but if you do instance, it's just for that one model. Type means every model of that type wants to be the same, so you need to be careful with these two. Instance is safer. And I've then got a comment put across there. So I've added a comment on. Filter. So I can have sorting and grouping. So just like you've got these here, you've got these at the top as well. So filter, you could filter by, don't need to do that. Sort and grouping, grand totals, itemize every instance. So if I take itemize every instance off, press OK, then I've just got 5 things, and they're not all shown. That's not a very useful view. If you do itemize every instance and grand totals, they might say there's 5 things in this model and this is what they are. Formatting. So you've got different things. So if we look at volume, let's see what it says. Field format. So it's going to 2 decimal places and it's meters cubed. So let's not use those settings, but let's increase this. So if we go to, let's use a custom, and let's go to more decimal places because it's in meters cubed. or of course you could change it to something else and then press OK. You can then see that these volumes are actually correct. They were just rounded to 0. So it's important to kind of explore these things on programs. Appearance gives you some thin lines, thick lines, kind of formatting kind of thing. So what you've got now is a very simple schedule. Yours will be more complicated than this. You need to put some extra columns in here, and then you can actually create calculations. So within fields in here, you can create calculations and say, okay, I wanted a calculated parameter, and say this is going to be a certain thing, for instance, the volume times a mass that you put in, or times the embodied carbon. So you can use this function to make this work properly. So let me show you how to put this schedule onto a drawing. It's the same as anything else. If you go to this view here and drag this schedule in and let go, you've then got a schedule. So that's a very crude example of what I'm asking you to do. I don't want to just give you videos that you follow line by line, but this should have given you enough information now between the things on the videos and asking demonstrators within the class to be able to produce this exercise with all the views and the schedule shown, including an embodied carbon calculation. I want everyone to be able to do this before they go on to the actual exercise, because the exercise is significantly more complicated than this. So you want to make sure you're very clear with this kind of model before you start creating something which is a full multi-story building. Thanks.